So, what a time for college football fans everywhere. The season right around the corner, fall camp's just getting started, and this weekend gave us fireworks on the recruiting trail, and that's exactly what we need to talk about college football recruiting. Because not only did we see a lot of big wins this weekend, there are a lot of big time prospects set to announce here soon, and that's where we need to turn our attention. Because one of the best defensive linemen in the class of 2024, a class loaded with elite defensive linemen, Dominick McKinley, is set to commit here soon and has a top three of the Oklahoma Sooners, the LSU Tigers, and the Texas Longhorns, something we've got to break down today. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe Dominick McKinley plays his college football in the state of Louisiana? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss it. And with all that being said, let's jump right into this. And as I alluded to in the intro, Dominick McKinley is one of the most gifted prospects in the class of 2024, regardless of position, but he's a top 10 defensive lineman. And whenever we really start diving into the class of 2024, one thing you're going to realize very quickly is that there is a lot of very gifted defensive linemen in this class. In fact, if you're a team that finds yourself having a need along the defensive line, this is the class to answer it. And Dominick McKinley would certainly be a massive win for any of the three institutions we're going to talk about today. He comes in as the number 38 player in the nation per the 24/7 Sports Composite, the number 7 defensive lineman, and the number 1 player in the state of Louisiana. And whenever we break this down, the top three being LSU, Oklahoma, and Texas, it makes a lot of sense. And we're going to start with the home school being LSU, because there's no doubt in my mind that LSU has been after Dominick McKinley for quite some time. It just makes sense. He has been a coveted prospect for a while. He's the number 1 player in Louisiana, and LSU has got a very good defensive line right now. I'm sure they want to continue adding into it with a player like Dominick McKinley. But interesting to note that this past week, it broke on social media that LSU coach Lindsey, who is the defensive line coach, would be stepping away from the team for some health issues. Now, first and foremost, thoughts and prayers with Coach Lindsey and his family. Hopefully everything is okay. Hopefully he has a speedy recovery. And even Brian Kelly said he thought that he could be back with the team at some point. Hopefully that's the case. I think that would be something that would make us all very happy. But the other thing I think we need to realize is that Coach Lindsey only got there in May, meaning this isn't a situation where Lindsey has been after Dominick McKinley for LSU for years now. They've built up this long-standing relationship, and now that's torn away. As much as Coach Lindsey is a phenomenal defensive line coach, LSU, I have no doubt, has been sending a full court press after Dominick McKinley. Coach Lindsey was not the only one. I'm sure Brian Kelly was involved, and I'm sure there are several other coaches hot on the trail of the very talented defensive linemen. And one thing we've got to acknowledge, it's tough getting these kids out of Louisiana. There's not another major brand in the state pulling their attention away. If we look at Texas, there are so many other major brands in Texas dividing the recruits' attention. Even if we look at Oklahoma, there are 2 major brands in Oklahoma that play Power 5 football, dividing these kids' attention. The state of Alabama, much the same. 2 institutions dividing the attention. That's not the case in Louisiana. Yes, there's the University of Louisiana, and yes, they've been very good at football, but they're not Power 5. They're not the SEC darlings that LSU are. And so for these prospects coming out the state, it's very hard for an outside force to come in and consistently get these wins, especially if it's a player that LSU really wants. And I have every reason to suspect Brian Kelly really wants Dominick McKinley. But what about the Oklahoma Sooners? Because interestingly enough, if you would have asked me 2 months ago where I thought Dominick McKinley would end up, there would be 2 teams that we would really talk heavily about. The first being LSU, the second being the Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma is in an interesting position because whenever we're talking about defensive line recruiting, I don't know that you can point me to another fan base that's as fervent about landing elite defensive linemen as the Oklahoma Sooner fan base are. They have a need, they realize this, and they have been attacking that need. There are so many top-tier defensive linemen that the Oklahoma Sooners are after, and they would love more than anything to add Dominick McKinley into the fold. Interestingly enough, here we have to understand that the Oklahoma defensive line coach Todd Bates is someone who's had not only a lot of success on the recruiting trail, but a lot of success architecting defensive lines. Whenever we go back and look at those Clemson defenses, a big reason for their success was the push Todd Bates' defensive fronts were able to generate on the offensive line. They were able to get the quarterback uncomfortable, and then Brent Venables' linebackers were just running free through the open gaps. That's exactly what Oklahoma wants, but they have got to get the personnel in order to do so. They're trying to recruit to the SEC standard right now, and Dominick McKinley satisfies that standard. So for Oklahoma, they're going to continue pushing for the very talented defensive linemen. They're going to double down, and for good reason. In a perfect world for the Oklahoma Sooners, they're in on guys such as Williams Nwaneri. They're in on guys such as David Stone, Nigel Smith, Dominick McKinley. If you asked OU fans, they would love to land all of them. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But now we need to turn our attention to the newest team involved in this, the Texas Longhorns. Because even though, just as I said, 2 months ago, I would have told you I thought this was a two-team race between Oklahoma and LSU, that has not stopped Texas from absolutely surging in this recruiting battle. So much so that Texas has had quite a few predictions go in their favor as to where Dominick McKinley will land. And whenever we talk about the Texas Longhorns, defensive line recruiting is at a premium for them as well. And we too need to understand who their defensive line coach is, being Bo Davis. Someone who's been around the block, someone who's had success in college football, someone who's had success at the NFL. And I've always told you, I find that to be a compelling pitch. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a high school athlete. You're sitting in your living room with your parents, and in walks a coach that can honestly look you in the face and say, hey, I've had success recruiting at the college level. I've had success developing at the college level. I've sent guys to the NFL. And oh yeah, by the way, then I myself went to coach at the NFL level and found success there as well. That is a tough pitch to say no to, one that we have absolutely got to take into account. On top of that, Bo Davis is bringing an attitude to the Texas Longhorns that if you ask Texas fans, and even myself, I think they have absolutely needed for a while. He's bringing that edge, the edge they're going to need in the SEC, and you can bet that's going to be part of the pitch to Dominick McKinley. Much like I said with Oklahoma and being able to pitch a change, so too can Texas. They're about to make a massive change, as are the Oklahoma Sooners, going from the Big 12 to the SEC. An interesting pitch both of those programs have is come be a catalyst of change. We've got to revamp some of the things we do now that we're changing our scenery. You can be a major part of that. Those types of pitches are intriguing. Look, at the end of the day, this is absolutely one we're going to have to watch. We recognize how difficult it is getting these top-tier guys out of the state of Louisiana if LSU really wants them, and I have every reason to believe LSU really wants Dominick McKinley, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. The Texas Longhorns just last year got a massive win in the state of Louisiana for a prospect they were very excited about, so they've done it before. It's not impossible, and one thing we talk about all the time here on the channel, you're probably not going to win every battle in your state, but it's about winning the battles you can't afford to lose. This is one we have absolutely got to watch because Texas wants Dominick McKinley. Oklahoma needs the defensive line help. They're in on a lot of very talented defensive linemen, but they need all the wins they can get. And LSU, well, they would love nothing more than to keep him home and away from two programs that before they know it will be facing them in their own league play. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking, let me know where you think Dominick McKinley ends up and why you think that program ends up getting him. That's it. See ya.